Okay, let's unpack this. It sounds almost like science fiction, doesn't it? You take a 16th century decree from a Muslim Ottoman Sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent, and you use math to connect it to, well, a major Judeo-Christian end times prophecy.
Exactly. And specifically, it's being tied to the timing for rebuilding the Jewish Third Temple in Jerusalem.
That's the core of what we're diving into today. We're looking at sources that weave together history, ancient scripture, some very precise math, and frankly, modern religious and political hopes, all focused on Jerusalem.
Right. And the mission here is really to understand why this particular historical event, Suleiman's rebuilding of the city walls, is being singled out by these researchers as the key, the starting gun for this prophetic countdown.
So where do we start? What's the foundation for this?
The foundation is Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. It's a very famous passage. It talks about a command, a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem.
Hmm.
And prophetic researchers often frame this within what's called the 70 weeks prophecy from Daniel.
Okay, 70 weeks, but that doesn't mean 70 literal weeks, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely not. In this kind of prophetic interpretation, you have to understand the code. A day typically equals a year. So one prophetic week is actually a week of years, meaning 7 years.
Got it. So 70 weeks times 7 years per week.
Yeah.
That gives you 490 years.
Precisely. That 490-year cycle is the coefficient, the duration, the template that gets applied.
And the argument is that Suleiman the Magnificent, a major figure, ruler during the Ottoman Golden Age, somehow triggered this 490-year countdown.
That's the assertion. He issued a decree in 1535 AD to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. The actual construction started around 1537 and finished up in 1541.
And these are the walls you can still see today, the ones around the old city.
Yes, those very walls. Now, the primary purpose was security, refortifying the city, but the sources we're looking at place huge emphasis on his actions concerning one specific gate.
The Eastern Gate, or the Golden Gate.
That's the one. They argue his actions there weren't just practical, they were deeply symbolic, even prophetically targeted.
How so? What did he do?
Two key things, according to these interpretations. First, he ordered the Golden Gate sealed up, bricked shut.
Why would he do that?
The stated reason in these sources is that it was a direct attempt to prevent the prophesied return of the Jewish Messiah, who Christians believe is Jesus, through that specific gate, as tradition held.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a statement. What was the second thing?
The second move was maybe even more strategically clever, using religious law. He established a Muslim cemetery directly in front of the now sealed gate.
A cemetery. Okay, I feel like I'm missing the significance there.
It's about Jewish ritual purity. A Cohen, a priest from the priestly lineage, is forbidden by halakha, by Jewish law, from walking over a grave or through a cemetery.
Ah, so placing a cemetery there creates a kind of permanent ritual barrier, preventing the priestly procession needed for a messianic arrival via that gate.
Exactly. It's seen as a deliberate, long-term block based on religious technicality.
Okay, but still, Jerusalem's been rebuilt or refortified many times over the centuries. Yeah. Why Suleiman? Why this decree from the 1500s and not, say, decrees from Persian kings like Artaxerxes, which are more traditionally linked to Daniel 9? Are the sources just picking the one that fits their timeline?
That's a fair question, and it's definitely a point of debate in broader scholarship. But the sources we're examining justify focusing on Suleiman through, well, symmetry, especially linguistic and symbolic symmetry.
Symmetry? How?
It starts with the name. Suleiman is simply the Arabic form of the Hebrew name Shlomo, or Solomon.
Solomon, as in King Solomon, who built the first temple.
Precisely. So there's this idea of parallelism. If Solomon built the first temple, perhaps the figure connected to the third temple's rebuilding, the one issuing the decree, might echo that name, a kind of Solomon 2.0.
And Suleiman fits that bill because of his name and his era.
Yes, and the fact he reigned during the Ottoman Golden Age mirrors Solomon's own Golden Age. For these researchers, that parallel isn't just coincidence. It's a prophetic marker, validating his decree as the correct starting point for the 490-year countdown.
Interesting. So it's this combination of the name, the Golden Age context, and the specific actions at the Golden Gate that elevates Suleiman's decree in their view.
Correct. That's the justification provided.
All right, so let's apply the math then. We take Suleiman's decree, link it to Solomon, accept it as the starting point, and use the 490-year Daniel coefficient. What dates do we get?
Okay, calculation 1 focuses on the start of the work. The sources often use 1536 AD, sometimes cited as the effective year the decree took force or work began in earnest.
So 1536 plus 490 years.
Lands you squarely in 2026 AD.
But what do the sources say 2026 represents?
That date is widely proposed in this specific line of interpretation as the year the actual physical construction of the Third Temple might begin, the rebuilding itself.
Okay, that's one date. You mentioned two calculations.
Right. The second calculation uses the completion date of Suleiman's project. The walls were finished and, you could say, dedicated in 1541 AD.
So 1541 plus the same 490 years.
Takes you to 2033 AD.
And the significance of 2033.
In this framework, 2033 is often suggested as the potential year for the culmination event, specifically the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Wow. So 2026 for the temple rebuild, 2033 for the return. That's incredibly precise.
It is. And there's one more piece of this historical parallel they point to, the duration of Suleiman's project itself.
How long did it take again? From the decree around 150-3536 to the completion in 1541.
About 7 years, give or take, depending on the exact start point you use.
7 years, and Daniel's 70th week, the final period in that prophecy,
is famously a 7-year period, often called the tribulation.
So the sources see Suleiman's 7-year building project as a historical miniature, a foreshadowing of the final 7-year prophetic period.
That's exactly the argument. It adds another layer of symmetry, suggesting the historical timeline itself is prophetically encoded.
It's a neat fit, you have to admit. Almost too neat. But okay, if this historical echo points to 2026 and 2033, are there things happening now that make researchers think this isn't just theory? What are the modern indicators?
Yeah, good question. Because for people tracking end times prophecy, recent events on the ground in Jerusalem are seen as, well, breathtaking steps towards making a rebuilding decree feasible. The sources highlight 5 key developments.
Okay, what's number 1?
Ritual readiness. Specifically, the progress regarding the red heifer. You need the ashes of a perfect red heifer mixed with water for the ritual purification of priests and the temple itself.
Something that hasn't been possible for nearly 2,000 years, right?
Correct. Finding suitable heifers, importing them, preparing for the ceremony, even performing mock redressals or practices signals that a major ritual barrier is potentially being overcome.
Okay, that's huge from a religious standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
What else? More practical things.
Yes. Second, actual temple traffic signs have appeared on roads in Jerusalem, directing towards the Temple Mount.
Like official road signs.
Reportedly, yes. Third, you have flags being flown, particularly by Jewish settlers in sensitive areas, that openly depict the planned Third Temple. It's moved from a hidden hope to a public visual campaign.
So it's becoming normalized, almost expected.
That seems to be the aim. Fourth is a big political shift. Itamar Ben-Gvir, a Knesset member, leading groups of Jews to openly pray on the Temple Mount itself. This directly challenges the long-standing status quo prohibiting Jewish prayer there.
It's incredibly controversial. And number 5.
Perhaps the most potent symbol? The blowing of the shofar, the ram's horn on the Temple Mount. Sources claim this happened recently for the first time since the Second Temple was destroyed in 70 AD. It's a powerful auditory symbol of reclamation.
Okay, so ritual readiness, public signage, visual symbols, political challenges to the status quo, and ancient sounds returning. That's quite a list.
And add to that the practical construction aspect, the technology.
Yeah.
The stonemasons involved, groups like the Temple Institute, now state they have the plans, the materials identified, and the technology to cut and prepare the massive stones needed. Their estimate: once a decree is given, the actual time to erect the main structure could be incredibly fast, a matter of weeks, some claim.
Weeks, not years.
That's the projection, which, if true, dramatically accelerates how quickly things could move if a political decision were made.
Which brings us to the massive elephant in the room, or rather, on the mount location. The Dome of the Rock, a hugely important Islamic shrine, sits right there. Surely they're not planning to build over it.
No, the sources we're examining are very clear on this. They argue against building on the site of the Dome of the Rock.
So where do they propose putting the Third Temple, specifically the Holy of Holies, the most sacred spot?
They pinpoint a location slightly to the north of the Dome of the Rock, an area currently marked by a smaller, much less known cupola called the Dome of the Spirits, or sometimes the Dome of the Tablets.
The Dome of the Spirits. Okay, but that's still on the Temple Mount platform. How do they justify that specific spot as the original location of the Holy of Holies? They'd need some serious proof, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. It can't just be conjecture. The research relies on a kind of triangulation, using multiple lines of evidence that, they claim, all converge on this northern site.
Triangulation? Like what?
Okay, first line of evidence, Talmudic alignment. Ancient Jewish texts, the Talmud, described the rituals for burning the red heifer. This had to be done on the Mount of Olives, east of the temple. And the priest performing the ritual needed a direct line of sight through the eastern gate, the Golden Gate, straight into the temple courtyard towards the Holy of Holies.
And if you trace that line of sight today from the traditional spot on the Mount of Olives through the Golden Gate.
It points directly towards the Dome of the Spirits area, not the Dome of the Rock.
Interesting. Okay, what's the second line of evidence?
Gospels and distance. New Testament accounts describe Jesus teaching his disciples on the Mount of Olives in a spot specifically described as opposite the temple. This location is also identified as being within a Sabbath day's walk, a measurable distance according to Jewish law. Calculating that distance and location again points towards the northern site being opposite that spot on the Mount of Olives.
Okay, so Talmudic ritual alignment and New Testament geographical clues. What else? You mentioned something about astronomy earlier.
Yes, this is where it gets perhaps more esoteric, but quite fascinating. The third line of evidence is astronomical correspondence. The argument is that the entire layout of ancient Jerusalem, particularly the gates of the Old City, was designed to mirror the stars of the constellation Orion.
The city layout mirrors Orion.
Sure. So that's the claim. Ancient Asher architecture, essentially, linking the earthly city to the heavens.
Okay, that's a big claim. Is there math involved too?
There is. That's the fourth proof. Mathematical overlay. It involves the phi ratio, the golden ratio, or golden spiral.
That spiral pattern found in nature art architecture.
Exactly. The argument is if you superimpose the phi ratio spiral onto an accurate map of the Temple Mount platform, the focal point, the very center or fulcrum of that perfect spiral.
Let me guess. It lands on the Dome of the Spirits.
Precisely. It suggests the original placement was based on this principle of perfect proportion or sacred geometry, and that geometry points to the northern site.
So Talmud, Gospels, astronomy, and geometry all pointing north. Is there a specific star connection within the Orion theory?
Yes, that's the fifth point, refining the Orion connection. The claim is the core Temple Mount structures align with the three prominent stars in Orion's belt.
Halatek, Elalam, and Mintaka.
Right. And according to this research, the specific star corresponding to the location of the Holy of Holies is Mintaka.
And Mintaka corresponds to the Dome of the Spirits location.
Yes. And Mintaka is historically significant itself. It was often used as a key navigational reference point due to its position near the celestial equator. So its alignment here is presented as more than just coincidence. It's seen as cosmically and historically significant.
Wow. Okay, let's recap the argument then. We have Suleiman, the Solomon Echo, providing a decree in the 1530s-40s. We apply a 490-year Daniel cycle, landing on 2026 for a potential rebuild and 2033 for a potential return.
Correct. Supported by this 7-year construction time, echoing Daniel's final week.
Then we have modern signs, red heifer progress, temple signs, flags, prayers on the mount, the shofar, plus the tech making a quick build possible.
Yes, indicating accelerating readiness.
And finally, a proposed location, the northern site over the Dome of the Spirits, supposedly verified by Talmudic sightlines, gospel geography, Orion constellation mapping, phi ratio geometry, and the specific alignment with the star Mintaka.
That's the convergence of evidence presented in these sources.
It's a lot to take in. A complex web connecting history, prophecy, math, astronomy, and current events.
It really is. And if you step back and look at the bigger picture presented in these sources, the stakes are presented as incredibly high.
What do you mean? Beyond just rebuilding a temple?
Yes. The expectation outlined is that this third temple isn't just about restoring ancient Jewish worship. It's envisioned or feared as becoming something else, a tower of power, some call it, echoing the Tower of Babel. A center intended to unify the world's nations and religions under a single global system, potentially under one leader figure.
Unification, but not necessarily in a positive way from their perspective.
Exactly. The sources explicitly state the fear is unity under one God, but, quote, not the God of the Bible. It's seen as a potential seat of global governance that opposes traditional Judeo-Christian beliefs.
Which leads to that final, quite chilling point mentioned in the sources. The consequence of this potential new global structure centered around the temple.
Right. They connect it back to the themes of rejecting the Messiah, like Suleiman sealing the gate. The projection is the establishment of something they term a blasphemy office.
A blasphemy office. What would that entail?
According to these interpretations of prophecy, under this future system, declaring Jesus Christ as the true King and Lord would be redefined as blasphemy against the accepted global authority or deity.
And the punishment mentioned is severe.
Yes. The sources explicitly mention decapitation as the penalty prescribed in the texts they cite.
That's a stark warning. It definitely frames the whole discussion not just as historical curiosity or prophetic calculation, but as something with potentially profound, even dangerous implications for faith and power on a global scale. Leaves you with a lot to think about.